and perhaps voice over if there's anything missed. Okay, last time we looked at the basic rationale, so we did it today actually, looking at the basic rationale for why you outsource certain things. We're going to have a little think about the scope of the outsourcing. Maybe get to making a high-level statement of intent, but I might do that in a seminar instead. And about checking previous experience and defining requirements. And a start to considering, well, we do that basically all along, some of the potential problems and issues and things we've got to think about. They're not problems, these are things that you'll face as managers. Huh? And so we just got to think critically about how we're going to tackle some of these points in the backdrop of a real organizational experience. Okay. Now, what this particular stage, scoping, sorting out more or less what we want to place on the market. Say we have a rough idea of a particular process, a particular idea which we want to, let's explore whether or not that can be done more effectively in the market. Okay, so it may be a non-core process, and we say, right, let's do that. Let's outsource our drilling to all of this conglomerate. So what we're talking about now is agreeing objectives and scoping the service need, yeah? Thinking about what parts of the service in some detail that we need to be outsourcing, not in general, but in detail, not for this lecture, but when you're doing this for real, you do have to really nail down exactly what you are going to outsource. Because if you don't, then all sorts of discussions take place later on down the line, and disagreements, even going to court and the rest of it, about what precisely we agreed to outsource to another party. We're going to be talking about, perhaps not today, but later on, baselining, confirming delivery requirements. What do we actually need? What are the benefits that we're expecting? So before you start any of this stuff, really, we need to be clear in our minds, why are we doing it? If we are assuming that we can get cost reduction or we can get a service for a certain amount of money, then okay, let's put that down on paper more or less and say this is what our expectations are, this is what it looks like in a business case that we can take to management and say this is what we want to do and here is the benefit to our organization. All with the assumptions, so later on when things perhaps have run for a while, you can refer back to that and say, okay, what did we expect to achieve during this whole thing? And corollary, what did we achieve? Now all this and the transition requirements, it's also quite important, but I do that as a separate lecture. Okay, what is it we need to do to move a service from A to B? It's not simple to say, here's the keys, get on with it. There's a whole load of processes and activities that we must take account of when we're moving a service to what is another organization in most cases. Yeah? And all of this, blah, 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 comes down to the business case for outsourcing. We don't do an example here, really. Your report might look something like that. It's entirely up to you. But what is the business case? This is what we're going to do. Here are our expectations. This is the scope of the service. This is how we're going to transfer this from A to B, along with a couple of options. Yeah? Now, state right up front that outsourcing itself is what I would call an operational improvement option. Yeah. Now, yes, all of us here do operations management, and there are lots of ways of improving processes. For example, eliminating processes, simplifying them, and so forth. And one of the options, of course, is to find somebody who can do it better than you can, and outsourcing it. So it's an operational improvement option. It's not a problem in its own right, which I often say outsourcing is a problem. No, it's not. What we're using outsourcing for is a particular idea we have to improve our organizational processes. Yeah? Problem areas, it could be the operation mismatch to market requirement. It could be an old service which we're going to phase out. Rather than run it out ourselves, I mentioned last time, let's give it to somebody else to manage for us. It can be any sort of improvement. Maybe you think your IT department costs you too much money. Yeah? Leaving aside, often you don't know exactly what that is, but you have a vague feeling that that's cost me a lot of money. I'm not exactly sure what they do. Therefore, let's explore the option of outsourcing. Yeah? It's an option. Because what else could you do? If you thought your IT department was not effective and costing too much, what could you do? Well, outsourcing, that's second choice. Yeah. What's the first thing you would do?
Try to make improvements or projects to improve.
Of course you would. So that's the first stop, isn't it? You've got to validate whether or not it's needed. Because in principle, I would guess, if you followed the operations course, that, yeah, you could always eliminate processes, do some things like architecture, don't do that anymore, get that from the market, get rid of those people, and so forth. So a lot of cost reductions, perhaps you can do them yourself. Yeah? Perhaps. In public sector, it must be said that's still very, very, very tricky to do such a thing because unions and stuff like that make things tricky. So it's an area of improvement. You need to think what's going on. And your job, basically, as managers, whatever task you take on in the future, is always to be looking for this stuff. You run the day-to-day, yeah? Make sure it happens, your piece of the pie, but always you're thinking, how can I improve what I'm doing? How can I get my staff to be a little bit better? Do they need training, improvements and stuff like that? Can I do things more simply? Why am I doing it this way? Suggest to your boss, I could do it this way, save us money, and so on. So you should be thinking when you're out there, once you've done this type of course, how can I add value to my organisation at all times? Yeah? And remember for that transaction thing, we should be thinking about, yeah, more or less, and it's true, I would say most of the time in your careers going forward, cost will always be there. How to reduce that, to get it, it tends to be top of mind in organisations for you in the future. Yeah? Rationales to solve a business issue then. Symptoms of poor performance or structural issue. Could be just a vague idea you need to do something about it. So the idea in this approach is the early stages of an outsourced life cycle is looking for improvement options. Can be correcting a problem, and it can be ways of fixing things, perhaps organizational things within your own company as well. Yeah? So you approach it with that mindset, rather than, what I'm getting at is, rather than say, what I've got to do is outsource. No, what I have to do is I've got to fix something which may be a deficit in my organization. And for sure, outsourcing can be probably a major part of that in most companies, but approach it that way around. See what I'm getting at? Yeah? So don't problematize the process of outsourcing. What you're getting at is, how do I improve my organization? Make sense? So is outsourcing a problem? No, it's not. Okay, answer my own question there. First thing you can do is any stage is to agree internally what the objectives of the outsourcing are. And often, probably every time, people inside an organization disagree on what the objectives are. From a financial controller's perspective, of course, things like cost would be important, obviously. Yeah? Personnel, maybe skills are being degraded. From an IT person or a manufacturing person, it could be operations are not right. So they want to improve that. So, but this load of people have to come to some sort of agreement why you are doing this, yeah? In broad lines. So cost, flexibility, technology refresh, access to new skills, typical types of things. But we need to, it always comes in a cost, so it tends to be very, very, very much cost driven at the beginning at least, and probably on the signing of the contract. But we need to think of these other things as well. So the initial stages, get consensus, broad agreement. It's not exactly a business consensus. Somebody has to cut the ice. So that's what we're going to do for sure. But you have to just take into account the different views of why we want to do this. Yeah, does that make a lot of sense? Yeah, sensible management practice. Now, the point of all this is the mini bullet point intended, because what we want to do is, why do we want to do it? And that leads us directly to, okay, how do we measure it when we've done it, that we achieve those business objectives? And that is very important. Because if you are going for a cost reduction exercise and you cannot manage or measure the cost, what do you think of such an approach? What do you think of that? Pretty poor, isn't it? Yeah, if you really can't set down what your evaluation criteria are up front, and you should do that in the bid proposal. I'll cover that in quite some detail later. But even early on in a request for information, a request for proposal, you should be quite clear about what you are trying to achieve as a buyer of outsourced services, of what you hope to achieve by this. And I'll probably repeat myself in a minute. For example, let's assume that you are going to outsource in order to reduce the cost of a department by 20%, wherever it happens to be. You need to tell the vendor that. Why do you need to tell the vendors or potential vendors that?
You need to make a proposal that is according to...
Yep. You must, so if you tell a vendor, this is all, okay, what we want to achieve by this is 20% cost reduction, fine. Then the vendors can tailor the bid to your requirement. Yeah? That's very important, because I've been on both sides of this story. Knowing what the client wants is actually quite very important, because you do tailor the bid, as it will, or your response to the bid, strictly speaking, to what do they want to achieve out of all this. Often they're a bit contradictory, but we've got to sort that out. Now, setting the objectives must be set quite correctly, because right at this early stage, if you get it wrong, it imprints. It sets the whole thing in a certain context, which is very difficult to get out of. Yeah? So if you say, I want cost reduction, and later on he starts talking about flexibility, more resources, and all that sort of stuff, that is then not in the bid. It's not in the bid response. Big discussions start taking place. There's no innovation in there, you're not being flexible. All this sort of stuff starts popping into discussions later on. But the whole thing is now set. The vendor and your own organization will gear themselves up to a cost reduction exercise, in effect, yeah, for the entire bid process. And it's very, very difficult to change it later on. Believe me, it really is. Objectives need to be all of these good things, smart, measurable, etc. So sensible things to be looked for. Watch for inconsistent objectives. That's the most important bit here. Watch asking for increased service and low cost at the same time. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? If I ask somebody, I want to reduce the cost, but I want service level 99%. Oh yeah, that as well, for sure. It's a little bit contradictory. Yeah, you want the service which is tailored to your need, whatever that is. Yeah, so you need to make that balance. It's like in the supply chain stuff. Yes, you can ask for no stockouts, for sure, but the result of that is your cost will go through the roof. So this is just a little bit inconsistent. So just watch for flexibility and increased service and low cost at the same time. So your objectives must be more or less sensible and in balance. Yeah, that makes sense back there? Clear? Asking for flexibility in customized service implies the vendor cannot take advantage of scale and costs might actually rise. Now I've lost touch with a number of times that colleagues have told me, yeah, they tied on a really tight contract, everything nailed down, and the next day the buyer comes along and says, we want to change things, or we want flexibility, or we want innovation, and all the rest of it. It's not in the contract, it's not being paid for, and it's going to be a real problem. So you've got to get these things right up front. Yeah? Flexibility costs money. If they want to change services, or they want to move things up and down, that costs the vendor money. It's got to be recovered. They're in business. Yeah? So we need to understand that as buyers. Yeah? And share all this stuff with the vendors, with the potential people you're going to invite to do the bid. Clear objectives means that the vendors can tailor their bid response to your precise needs. The closer that is, the better it can be for the outcome in the end. Yeah? Or at least you can expose all of the nasty problems which can occur. Yeah? Potential areas got to be scoped in detail, as always, I'm afraid. What departments, what people and roles, if you're outsourcing people, what people or better roles will be outsourced. Who are they? What do they do? And important bit is the middle one, enables organizational interfaces to be recognized later and the service concept defined. In the BT example, the organizational interfaces between the various all of the players really, between the various players in that particular rig explosion were not well formed, let's put it like that. There were gaps between the organizations about who was doing what. One of the core reasons why that particular explosion happened. Detailed modeling can be needed, so discounted cash flow. All of this stuff needs to be put there. Write down the assumptions about cash flow. Do you do accounting on your course? Oh, you spared that. You should ask. You do accounting. Why not? It's even more boring than supply chain management, believe it or not. Yeah. Almost. Not quite. Okay, write down the assumptions about cash flows and ensure the transition cost is accounted for. I'll cover that later. But oftentimes people forget about the very, very expensive transition costs which are hiding away in outsourced services. Yeah? So lots of things to be thinking about. You can show your scope like these little pretty diagrams, but that sort of detail is needed. You can look at the diagram later. But that sort of level is needed. Who are the people? Under what option are we moving to another organization? So you can understand it and recognize the people and who's doing what. Very, very important. Okay, high-level statement of work is developed. Where is it? Location of the activity, scope, service, the outcomes you need. What's its context? Where is it in the organization? A whole load of things need to be taken into account in order to get this really buttoned down tightly. Now, unfortunately, this is not done in some cases. That there's some handshake on the golf course and stuff like that. They're going away more and more. They're a hopeless way of doing things. And we have to pick up the pieces later. No, this is a business operation, just the same as any other you'll face. You're discussing procurement on this course. So get it right is the bottom line. Yeah? Okay, makes sense? Everybody agree with that? I did mention, what's our case study? Is it outsourcing public sector? So we'll come back to that. We need to think about outsourcing in the IT in the public sector tomorrow. It is that one, isn't it? Anybody looked at the case study for tomorrow? Oh, right, okay. Oh, that's tomorrow, of course. Look at it tomorrow. Yeah? There's a couple of papers up there which I put. Can you download them tomorrow? Because I'm not supposed to do that. So make sure you download them, get one, and I can hide them again. Yeah, so just make sure. So you're a naughty person for doing that. But there's some nice papers up there. Check on any existing outsourcing deals. So we're still in scoping. Yeah, we're still at the beginning. We haven't done anything yet. And so we work out our services, then check what outsourcing contracts have happened before in your organization to check if there's anything gone wrong. Or you may have done some work with the vendors you're thinking of employing on this one. You need to check how it went last time. A lot of big deals, it goes completely pear-shaped and you find the same vendors coming in through the door to do the next one to screw that one up as well. It really does happen. Check what's happened in the past. Has the outsourcing context changed? What have we learned? What can be improved? There always is something. There's always something we missed last time. In Unilever's case, after the end of 5 years of that particular Unisys outsourcing, they had, out of the 75 core service level agreements, I think just under half of them were not ready after 5 years. Yeah? I have no idea why, but that's just one of the problems. It just slips through the fingers. So you can be damn sure that this time, when they're doing the recontracting, that sort of stuff, hold on, why was that? What went on there? So how was the project managed is also important. Particularly if you've got experience with any of the vendors you've got eyeing up for the new job, then how they got on last time is really quite important. Yeah? Set down the transition, sorts out the vendor to understand and pitch the requirements. Yeah? So what do you need from the transition in detail? Yeah? Do you need the vendor to take over your people? Do you need the vendor to make your people redundant, for example? Yeah? Do you need the vendor to do all of these things, to transition and retrain them or whatever? All of these have to be nailed down quite early on, and you have to tell the vendor, yeah, and not tell them afterwards you should have got rid of these people. And I'll check the vendor if I've forgotten everything. That's all that means. That particular, there's always something, yeah. And a whole lot of things we'll cover later on about planning the transition, including the change management approach. On this course, I will cover a little bit on change management as well, and not just the writing change requests out. I mean managing the change as it should be done inside organisations, because it never is.